Everyone to kindly assemble back as we begin with our next
Hi,
session that
you're putting you
focuses
live now.
on international FemTech success stories shaping the future of women's health.
Karen, you are live on screen now.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I can see part of you. I'm very excited to be here this morning. I heard you had a very good day yesterday. Next year, I will try to come in person. In the next 20 to 30 minutes, I'll present OCON Healthcare. OCON is an international company dealing with women's health.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt, but before we begin with the presentation and the session, I think it's very important to firstly acknowledge that you have joined us from your by devoting your valuable time to this session. So, firstly, a huge round of applause, everyone. Like, as we all know, firstly, that women experience a lot of unique health issues when it comes to reproductive health, infertility, menopause, and we've spoken about it. But a proper guidance by advocating evidence-based programs in community health is extremely important. FemTech is a word coined for female technology that includes software development, products and services that mainly focus on female health. And to speak about the same, we have with us the Chief Executive Officer, OCON Healthcare, World Economic Forum Tech Pioneer 2022 as a next speaker, a personality who's featured in Forbes as among 3 women shaping the future of women's health by bringing next generation of femtech products to the market. She's one of the most prolific speaker, expert, and leader in women's healthcare space today, and we feel blessed to have you, ma'am, with us today. We have Keren Leshem, Chief Executive Officer, OCON Healthcare, World Economic Forum Tech Pioneer 2022. She will be presenting her session on shaping the future of women's health and also share her thoughts on the global femtech coming together and India-Israel collaboration opportunities. She's joining us virtually from Israel. A huge round of applause for her, everyone. Thank you so much, ma'am. I hand over this session to you.
So let me share my screen. I promise not to bore you with a ton of slides, but I think that seeing is believing. And so I hope you can see my screen well. So OCON stands for O configuration because everything we do is on a ball. There's a reason for the ball. This is an intrauterine ball, and we'll talk about the reasons for the ball in a minute. A little bit about OCON. OCON has been around for a while. We're a company that's about 10 years old, but about 3 years ago, we did a full restart up, I call it, because the company had a bit of stagnation, limited in terms of strategy. But today we have a portfolio of products to deliver drugs to the uterus on a 3-dimensional stent. So this is really a nitinol stent that folds into a ball, and I'll show you how this magic happens in a minute. In the past 3 years, indeed, I make a lot of noise, and so we won a lot of prizes. But I think the one we're most proud of is the World Economic Forum recognizing us as technology pioneers. This is the first women's health pharmaceutical company that has received this recognition, and this is so important because finally, even the World Economic Forum sees the importance of policy making in women's health and pushing women's health forward. And so I'm very honored and happy to be part of this policy change within the World Economic Forum. And hopefully we can do some good things to advance women's health globally. So we are a company and we are residing in Israel. We do have offices in Europe where we have some operations, but we are 85% women. This is very important for me, that if we deal in women's health, then we have women supporting our cause. And so we have women all across the departments, in our manufacturing, in our labs for our research and development, in the clinical department, in the medical department, and of course in the management as well. We're supported by investors in Israel and in the United States, and we look forward to bringing some of our solutions to India, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So the uterus, and I usually show this picture because I get some questions sometimes where the uterus is. And so it's only existing in the female anatomy. I always say that women have different organs than men, and I never mean the brain. I only mean the uterus. And so when we look at the uterus, we see that this is a very, very small cavity. And leading into the cavity is the cervix, which is very, very, very narrow. And if we try to put anything inside this cavity that is not shaped like a ball, it will poke, it will twist, it will turn, and it will be very, very painful. It may break. And so it seems as if an intrauterine ball makes the most sense to put in this uterine cavity. And as you can see, OCON's first ball, called IUB ballerine, is a copper IUD. It has copper beads on top of it, and it is beautifully open inside the uterine cavity to demonstrate that the uterus is a cavity. When we look at the available traditional T-shape IUDs, we see that they are usually too big for the average uterine size. Many of us think that this can only be inserted into women after having a child. Today, we know that these intrauterine devices can also be used for younger women. However, the size and the shape is still the issue. And let me show you what happens when we try to put a two-dimensional stick inside our uterus cavity. Take a look at the left part of your screen, and you'll see that sometimes because these devices are too big, or the way they are inserted into the cavity, they may perforate, they may go through the wall of the uterus, the fundus, the top part of the wall, or, and this is an even more prevalent condition, they malposition. They twist and they turn because our uterus contracts, and this contraction on this very stiff stick creates a lot of pain and a lot of bleeding. And this has women not wanting to use these IUDs or not wanting to even think about the insertion of these IUDs. And it's a shame because IUDs are known to be the most effective form, in this case, of contraception there is, with over 99% efficacy. And so now I want to show you the magic and how the ball works. You'll see that this tiny little stent folds backwards, right? It doesn't go up and into the uterine wall. It folds backwards, almost as if it has a safety mechanism that's built in. It's very small, it's very pliable. It doesn't twist, it doesn't turn. It has the thinnest insertion tube in the world because the nitinol frame is so thin. It's about a third in thickness of an intrauterine device. It doesn't have any sharp edges, and a ball would stay a ball no matter which way it turns, so there's no malposition here. Working on this ball and this way of introducing copper into the uterus, we have now built a full platform of introducing other therapeutics into the uterus. And so we're putting the first ball aside. The ballerine, of course, was the proof of concept. We inserted it in over 120,000 women, including the CEO of OCON, to demonstrate safety and efficacy, to demonstrate doctors can use it and women choose to wear it. Unfortunately, we cannot bring it into India. India has a cap on copper IUDs of $4. I think that's fantastic because it provides access to women. However, for innovation and innovative products, that's a bit of an issue. But now that we're focusing on uterine pathologies and uterine diseases and conditions and indications, I'm sure that these products will soon also show their face in India as well. So what have we done? We are now focusing on three very, very prevalent conditions in women's health. The first condition we're looking at has 1 out of 3 to 4 women suffering from it, and it's called heavy or abnormal uterine bleeding. There are many causes for abnormal uterine bleeding. Some are structural, physical causes inside the uterus, and some are not. We will address both of these structural and non-structural causes with our non-hormonal seed and our hormonal controlled release Prima. So we have 2 products now to support 1 in 3 women that bleed heavily during their monthly period. The other indication that we're going to focus on is uterine fibroids. 7 out of 10 women will have a uterine fibroid by the age of 50. These fibroids are painful, they cause bleeding, they can bloat our stomach, sometimes they're multiple. Women of color demonstrate 8 in 10 women. So 80% of women of color will have a uterine fibroid by the age of 50. There are no true local treatments for uterine fibroids. There are certain pills that we can take that have an array of side effects that even require additional drugs to be taken to counter these side effects, which is terrible. And so we want to take some of these active ingredients that are taken orally, put them on the ball, and so the dose would be much, much, much smaller, and introduce them into the uterus in a safe manner, treating the fibroid at its origin. Last but not least, we're going to look also at endometriosis. Some indications show that it's not 1 out of 10 women, but 1 out of 5 women. Endometriosis is when the uterine lining starts traveling in our body and flares up during our monthly period, not in our uterus. It is excruciating pain. It takes today between 5 to 7 years to even diagnose endometriosis, and the treatments, of course, are only hormones. And so we are looking to really bring these specific products to life through our very safe platform. You can realize that these are very expensive hobbies that we have, but I have a little dream that if we wear these devices in our bodies anyway, I want to put a little chip on them. I want this chip to be able to look at any changes to the lining, to the endometrium, to check for any cancer formation. I want to look at vitamins and minerals. We know the microbiome today can give us a lot of information on fertility and other diseases, and of course, diabetes. And so there's a lot to learn from the wealth of stem cells and blood that we have in our uterus. And so a little chip on these balls is also something we're looking to bring to life. Sounds amazing, right? That's why I love this slide. If you look at the left, people think that, these startups look like a straight line, right? You have a good idea, right? It sounds great. Someone throws money at you, you build it, and then it's an overnight success. No. 25 kilos later of managing this company, I can tell you what it really looks like. You look at the right, you start, you fail. No one really wants to give you money until someone does. You work way too hard. We don't get paid enough for this. You fail a lot. You, along the way, piss a lot of competitors, and they show you their big arm. And so eventually, we're hopeful that this company would be a success. We're so passionate about bringing these devices to life to really help women all over the world to have access to safer, cheaper therapeutics that don't require harmful hormones or harmful drugs to be swallowed. And this can be used in any community facility anywhere in the world. These little devices are consumables. They don't require any electricity or any management of buying any capital equipment. And so although what we're facing is more what it really looks like, I'm really hoping that at the end, we will be successful to bring these products to life. So I wanted to share some of our journey and how we restarted up our startup, because this could give, and I found this to be very helpful for entrepreneurs and doctors and wonderful people to have ideas on how to bring products to life, to learn a little bit from the downfalls and the headaches that we have looked along the way. So what happened with OCON? OCON had a product called the Ballerine. This is our first copper IUD that I showed you. And that was the only product. And I think the management at the time thought, oh, we're just going to develop it and someone's going to buy us for $1 billion because this is amazing. Well, that didn't happen. And they had no strategy. So the company was really stagnant for about 7 years. When I joined the company was about to go bankrupt and be closed. And the investors asked me, what do you think? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't come from ophthalmology, from women's health. I worked in ophthalmology and eye disease for about 15 years before I joined OCON. And so I said to them, let me check. And I checked the patents and I checked the team and I checked the market. And I told them, you guys would be crazy to close down this company. Do you realize what we have? We own the 3-dimensional space in the uterus. You can't put a ball. It's granted all over the world. And so together they infused money. We restarted the entire cap table. We flattened the whole organization. And since then, we've learned a lot of lessons. And today the company is, of course, on its trajectory up, and we have multiple products and multiple clinical studies, and they so far look very, very good. So we're very optimistic. But let's look a little bit about the lessons learned. So, fundraising. That's the million-dollar question. Where do I go? What do I do? Of course, there are multiple ways of getting funding. This could be through family and friends and angels. This could be through venture capital, and this could even be through private equity. The one thing I learned is we need to be creative. We need to have a big heart to understand that some people see this only as a business, even though we see this as a cause, and to understand that people have different opportunities that they'd like to invest in, and know your audience, know who you're going to. If you're just an idea, probably a venture capital will not be a good fit because you will hear a lot of no because you're way too young. On the other hand, if you are already in growth and you have products that you've been selling, going to an angel will probably be overwhelming. He will say, wow, you're already making money. You're already spending so much money. This is way too big and over my head. So really know the audience to whom you're fundraising and what you expect to give with what you expect to get. And I always tell entrepreneurs that I speak to is that really tailor your pitch deck. I tailored my pitch deck today for this talk. Every single talk or every single investor, partner, group that I meet, I tailor my pitch deck. So it has to be a story that has to be very tailored to who you're speaking to. So that's the number one lesson learned. The other lesson learned is the board of directors. When a company has a board of directors, most people think that the board is supposed to assist the CEO with strategy. Not really. The board is your go-to and your flaunting, right? And so if on the board you have big companies or big key opinion leaders or industry experts or nice investors, this helps the company push forward in terms of strategy, of course, but also in terms of fundraising. And so it's very, very important to orchestrate and collect board members that are not only investors, but also industry experts. When I again joined OCON, I knew nothing about women's health. And I thought to myself, okay, what's the biggest company in the world for these devices? Cooper Surgical in the United States. All right, let's call their president, which I did. I completely cold called him. And he answered the phone and he said, yes, I've known OCON, but one product and it's so far away from the market in the US. And I said, well, why don't you join my board and help me bring these products and this strategy to the US? And so Dr. Robert Auerbach, who is the former now president and CEO of Cooper, who's also an OBGYN, a professor at Yale University, is sitting on OCON's board. This gives a lot of identification that this company has products that big companies would actually look at. And so industry experts are super important to be part of the board of a company. And of course, communication and preparation. When we come and we present our company or we have certain meetings that we have on a continuous basis, we just think that people will probably get where we are, but we live this every single day. And so when we do want to prepare for a meeting such as a board, it's always best to prepare the individuals actually before the board, give them a call, tell them, look, this is what I'm going to talk about. Do you have any questions? The last thing we want are surprises in a place where decisions are being made. Another lesson learned is team. Can't do this by myself. I always say the ones that really work are the team. I'm the only one that talks about it. So I'm just the cheerleader. And actually, I found online what team means, and I thought that was great. So together, everyone achieves more. I really, really believe that. Get some good people around you that believe in the cause and work with you. And when you have poisonous people around you, you just get rid of them. We've had some of those when I joined OCON, and I thought, if they don't believe in the product or the cause, they need to go. And I'm doing them a favor, and I'm doing the company a favor. And so, poisonous people out, great team members in. These are startups, so people realize that they need to do a lot of multiple tasks and not very specific tasks. So everyone does a lot. And of course, part of the network that we all build, and now I'm part of your network and you're part of my network, is to find these good people in regulatory and in clinical and in medical, and of course in CMC and in quality. And there's so many functions that we need to find. And so our network is super, super helpful in helping us find these relevant people. I don't think I've ever went to a headhunter or to these companies that find, relevant staff because of my network. I reach out to my network, and when you get a recommendation, it's usually a much better way to find great team members and great advocates versus paying someone a fee to find someone that has a really nice CV in the back of their, kind of board. Last but not least, you can, fundraise, you can have a great board, you can have a great team, but if you don't have a very good product, or if you have a product that's not very necessary, and so I always say that we need to test our product. It takes a little bit more time, it takes a little bit more money, but what OCON did is that we tested our first ballerine in Austria. Nobody heard of it. It wasn't, a very big deal, but the product was a lot smaller. We did a mini intrauterine ball, and it was horrible. It, expelled all over the place, and it was not a very good fit to older women. And so we built a bigger product now called the MIDI. And so it was very, very important that we didn't go to market with the mini product and really tested it specifically in a certain market. I would love to bring one of our products to India to test it locally, because I think that the access to hospitals may be a little bit more restricted, and we can do some great testing in the community. And so we're working on partnership right now to try and bring some of our abnormal uterine bleeding options to India as well. This is hugely impactful because women that suffer from menstrual hygiene and anemia, very hard for them to work, very hard for them to really make a livelihood with this debilitating condition. And so product is very important. And also we need to celebrate some of our wins. We had a woman on a wheelchair that went through a clinical study with one of our products, and she wrote to us a beautiful email saying, you guys saved my life. I had abnormal uterine bleeding. It was horrific for me to deal with it. I'm now bleeding a lot less. And for that, we all went out for dinner. And we said, this is exactly what we want to do. We want to celebrate every single win that we have, because this one woman that we helped will tomorrow be 10 women, and then 1,000 women, and then 100,000 women. And so really, really important to celebrate your wins, even though it's a very commotional and very difficult journey that we're all going to go through, because women's health is not cardiology. Unfortunately, it's not ophthalmology, it's women's health. And so there's a lot of hurdles to kind of go through, if through fundraising, if through getting team members that are, industry experts, and of course, making sure the product has a market fit. Last thing I want to share about COVID, and it seems like it's like old news, right? Especially for us here in Israel, we don't even, care about it. There's no testing to be done when you travel out or travel in. But I think it changed a lot. Look, I'm here on Zoom. Where in the world would we have this, I don't know, 5 and 10 years ago, right? Either you travel to a conference or you don't travel to a conference. And so I think COVID, and I'm a horrific optimistic, right? Everything I do, I see on the positive lens. I think COVID actually did a service for all of us. We saved a lot of money on travel, on salaries. We made a lot of quicker deals over Zoom in Australia and in Canada, in Mexico, in Russia, in Japan, in China. Amazing, all over Zoom. We never met anyone in person. Now we've started to meet people in person, which is really weird because we already signed the deals and we're doing the collaboration. And so that's something that is really fascinating to me. And of course, we can always blame COVID, right? Our sales dropped during COVID because women couldn't get to the doctor. So COVID. And so I think this is a new era. I think it's a more efficient era. And we should build some of our strategies around the fact that we don't have to travel. We could do things remotely. We can have teams all over the world that work together. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Last but not least, giving back. I feel completely privileged to be able to lead a company that's making a huge difference in women's health. I'm a user of our technology, and I'm a happy user of our technology. And I think it's very, very important to give back. I think giving back is getting back, and it's really to count our blessings. And one of the things that we've done to give back is we adopted a college of women that help them escape from prostitution. And so these women have very huge gaps in their CVs, obviously, and this college gives them jobs or education. And what OCON can do is give them jobs. Even if they're 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, we have so many departments that they can join in administration and in our packaging and in our R&D. And so we're able to hug these women and allow them a safe journey back into the world of employment. Of course, we're mostly women, so they also feel very comfortable. And it's great to see some of these women really come back to productivity. And it gives us as a team a lot of pride. Also, I like a lot of opinions. And so there's a lot of different employees that sit around the table, not only women, also men, because I believe in gender diversity. But this is a very, very important that we have all age groups and all cultures, religions around the table as well. I mentor through a network, a health network here in Israel called 8400. We brought together all of the pharmaceutical, medical device, diagnostic companies in healthcare. And we have different programs. And one of the programs is mentoring younger entrepreneurs and younger CEOs. I'm mentoring a CEO this year and last year. She's amazing. She developed a biomarker in our secretions to find different diseases such as endometriosis, such as cancers. Really incredible. This will be a home testing little apparatus from our secretions. And so really happy to be able to help push other innovations forward. It's a great time to be in women's health. If we spoke 2 or 3 years ago, really nothing was happening. But this last 2 to 3 years, a lot of companies are doing shopping, a lot of mergers, acquisitions, investments. Still not enough, still very little, but the outlook is very, very promising. We have the big four doing these acquisitions, Organon and Bayer, Hologic and Cooper. They're all acquiring companies in our space. If it's medical devices, if it's pharmaceuticals, if it's diagnostics. And so really, really happy to see some of my colleagues and friends in this industry getting a little bit more support from the bigger players in this industry. And of course, so are we. And so really happy to be in this space as it kind of grows and gives a lot of push throughout the world. So last words of advice to all of you that are thinking about products, thinking about opening companies that are now in the midst of doing so, doctors that want to join the efforts of companies that are building products for the next generation of women's health. The number one advice is trust your gut and stay optimistic. I can, in 5 seconds, find 2,000 people that will tell you why this is a bad idea, it will never work, no one's going to use it, oh, somebody already thought about it, in 2 seconds, right? But trust your gut. As a woman or as a professional, if you know this is a good idea, it probably is. Get some people around you that are optimistic as you are. And maybe you need to fine tune it, maybe the business model needs fine tuning, but trust your gut. The second thing in order to do so is really to build a community. The first thing I did is really to look within LinkedIn and to look who can support the company and my efforts and how I can support others to really build a community, because this community could be your paying customers. This community could help you with your network and finding your next team member. The network can offer advice and expertise. I found my regulatory experts, my clinical experts, my key opinion leaders, all of them I found through my network. And so it's really, really important to build a community. I think that what Anu and the team are doing now with women's health in India is building a community. And you'll see the next year, you guys will be double the amount of tables. And the following year, probably quadruple the number of tables, because we're slowly now building a community also in India, which is fantastic. Third advice is don't afraid to get it wrong. I got it wrong so many times. I got it wrong with employees. I got it wrong with strategy. You change. It's sometimes costly and sometimes makes you not sleep at night. But mistakes are lessons learned. And, this is what I'm all about. All of these lessons that I've learned are because I made mistakes. And so don't be afraid to get it wrong. And to also say, oops, I made a mistake. No one's perfect, and move on. Mistakes are important to have. No one can get it 100% right. I can tell you from the start. And last but not least, don't forget to have fun. We're making women's health better. Most of these diseases are not diseases that will cause death. In most cases, at least with OCON, they're debilitating, they're painful, they're horrific, but they are not deadly. And so we need to have fun. We need to understand that even if we shape a little bit of women, a little bit of the time, we still need to have fun and celebrate these successes, small or big. I am done here. Really happy to answer any questions from the audience. Of course, if some of you hadn't had a chance to ask, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn is the best, but also through my email. Really, really happy to speak to anyone and offer any guidance.
Thank you so much, Keren. A huge round of applause, everyone. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes. No, that's completely fine.
Thanks, Karen, for that very, very interesting talk, and clearly something hugely innovative happening out there. I have a question, and I may be wrong about it, so please feel free to correct me. You are an Israeli-based company, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and you happen to mention in your presentation that you try to test your smaller size model and then a mid-size model on some other population and look forward to testing in India. How were these choices about testing on which populations were really sort of made, right? What made you choose these markets over, say, Israel, to test out the products, really?
So that's a very, very good question. I think that with the copper IUD, there wasn't really a specific women market that we looked for. We looked for a close by, small market that if we fail wouldn't be devastating on one hand, and on the other hand would be Western enough to be able to provide some guidance from doctors, physicians, caregivers, to give us some feedback. And there was a lot of feedback. There was feedback about the tube, and there was feedback about the insertion, and there was feedback about the size. And so we were very close here geographically with Austria, but it was still a small market that allowed us to do so. So that was the decision behind that. Other components of our decision, let's say for abnormal uterine bleeding, is that India would be a huge opportunity to be able to access a very big market that also suffers from this unbelievable condition, but also the rate of recruitment of patients would be very quick. I think that the innovation part of India, if we needed to manufacture locally, if we needed to source some of the specific ingredients of our products, would be very, very good in India. And so in that sense, going to India for some of the other products made sense to us as well. In any case, in order to go to the United States, for example, through FDA, you need a much bigger and wider audience of women, right? It has to be a lot more diverse. We need women of color, we need Asians, we need Caucasians, we need a bigger diversity. And so in that sense, when we do our pivotal study, we will also have an arm in Japan with our partner, in China with our partner, in Brazil with our partner, and of course also in the United States. So that's kind of what gets us going. Diversity of groups on one hand, closeness to us to really learn on the other hand. The pre-pivotal studies are done in Israel. Again, to be allowed to have access to doctors to give us their opinions. And so that's kind of the mindset behind how to choose areas to go to. And of course, cost has a big, aspect to it as well. The studies we're doing in Israel, we're also doing an arm in Georgia. Eastern Europe is a bit closer, more close to Israel in terms of geography, so it's very easy to travel and do insertions there. But on the other hand, it's also cheap. And so versus United States or Germany or any other state like that. And so that also, of course, is part of the consideration of where to choose. I
Thank
hope
you.
that answers
Yeah,
your
yeah,
question.
it definitely answers. But quick follow-up question. You said if we failed, it would be devastating, right? When you were trying out the model. Devastating for whom? For the company or for the people? That's one. Second, you say that, to try out your model in the US, you need to go via the FDA route. So clearly countries where the regulation policies are much more stronger do not become test cases, unlike, say, countries in India where the regulation policies are not yet in place. So isn't also that one of the reasons why certain countries are chosen to be the test case over others?
Absolutely. I would never go first to the US. Absolutely. We would do all of the testing before we go, for example, to the US. Absolutely. We can't have surprises there. It's a very big market for all the companies around the world. So yes, of course, I absolutely support your comment on regulatory being a huge undertaking when we choose where to go. I can tell you today that Europe is also going through a change from MDD to MDR. It's becoming as difficult to do regulatory studies as it is in the US. And so, again, this is another consideration that we have to think about when we go to test markets. By the way, when we test marketed the ballerine in Austria, it was already CE approved, so this wasn't a clinical study. With the other products, these are clinical studies. And so, indeed, regulatory hurdles are, of course, an issue. Where we can go, for example, Georgia, a lot less regulatory hurdles. With India, we haven't tried yet, so we're not sure. But we know that India many times would support CE marks. That's, of course, something that is taken into consideration. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. I think we can take that as the last question. Yes.
Keren, thank you for the session, especially for fearless entrepreneurs being optimistic, failing multiple times. I think it was quite inspiring to see the slides. I had a question about the board. Given that we are in the FemTech space, very few men and women have actually, especially in India, I think, been on boards in this particular space. What would your recommendation be when we are choosing an independent, say, board director, in future rounds or as the company grows? I think that's one question. And the second question is a little bit selfish. I believe you are mentoring many CEOs in Israel. Would you also like to do that for Indian femtech companies? I definitely want to put my ask in there. But yeah.
Well, thanks for the questions. Let's answer the board one first. Get someone international. It doesn't have to necessarily be someone from your country. Also me, most of my board is American. That's where my focus is. That's the market I want to go to. And also these are the people with the most connection and contribution and names in the industry. If I can get, the ex-president and CEO of Cooper Surgical, that's also an OBGYN from Yale University, obviously this gives a lot of credibility to the company, right? And this is the exact conversation I had with my mentee. She got a really amazing woman in Israel. And she was so happy and proud. And I said, but you're looking for investors in the United States. Nobody knows her. She's wonderful and she's great and she'll give you great advice, but it defeats the purpose. And so I always recommend to get someone international, some doctor, someone who's in the industry. I sit on 2 more boards, for example, but only in places where I really feel I can contribute. One is in Switzerland and another one is here in Israel, again, in the femtech space. But we're very picky, right? And we want to make sure, and you should be also very picky. If you're dealing with cancers, you want someone who's dealing in that space. If you're dealing, with vaginal treatments, you want someone dealing in that space. I deal with uterine conditions. I really want someone in that space. And so if that's possible. If not, look further, but I would definitely do something that's outside of my country. Indeed, that's one. And the other is my plate is super full, but I'm always happy to have periodic calls and give advice. And so once it's on the calendar, it absolutely happens. I make sure to have time for everyone. And so continuous mentoring sessions, maybe not in 2023 because I'm fully committed, but definitely if you need once a quarter or once a month, a call for an hour, I'm really, really happy to support and give time, of course.
Sure, I'll definitely reach out, Karen. Thank you so much.
Great, happy to.
Thank you so much, Keren. A huge round of applause, everyone, for her. And thank you so much for joining us virtually and adding to the value that we stand for and the vision of this conference and for devoting your precious time to this conference. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being so interested in women's health, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.